Well, if you go by logic, I mean, let's see, we have so many.
If you go by logic, Socrates was a cat. I mean, come on. It's what science works on evidence. Okay. Now,
right.
And just because we don't have particular
evidence suggests that life can only come from life. I mean, yeah.
No, it doesn't. No, Kevin. Kevin, that's the swan fallacy. There are no black swans because all we've ever seen are white swans. It's a demonstrable logical fallacy, and if it's the building block of your argument for the existence of God, you already lost.
Okay, but wait, listen to this.
All right.
How you can prove? You say the burden of proof is on me, but actually it's on you.
No, it's not.
Oh, really?
Realistically, because you're making a superficial, or not superficial, I don't know the word for it, but
we're saying that we don't believe in your invisible man in the sky.
Saying that, okay, the burden of proof isn't on you because you say God doesn't exist.
No, Kevin, you're not getting it. If I say to you, God doesn't exist, I have a burden of proof. I've said this 1,000 times. However, you're asserting that God exists, and I'm saying I don't believe you. Where's your evidence? You have the burden of proof because you're asserting a claim. And by way, Kevin, in an attempt to demonstrate your case that you have the burden of proof for, you begin constructing a logical argument. And you begin with the premise that life can only come from life. And I reject your premise.
Also, you started this call when you called in saying, I can demonstrate that God... So you pretty much declared yourself to have the burden of proof and the proof.
I didn't call you and say, I can prove to you that there is no God.
I mean, you called up and you said, I've got some proof to give you. So, at least in this conversation, you've got the burden of proof because you declared yourself to be the man with the proof. All right?
But anybody...
Stating my proof, you just...
We did.
Because I did give you a chance.
We gave you a chance, but we explained why, in our opinion,
it's not
your premise was you were working from a false premise.
It's not an opinion.
Yeah.
Your premise has not been demonstrated, and your assumption that life can only come from life is an inductive argument. You've used an inductive argument to reach a premise, and it is a demonstrably flawed one in the same way that the black swan fallacy is.
And in any event, if life can only come from life, then you were left with either, two possibilities.
Biological life, yeah.
Yeah, biological life.
God's biologically alive.
Yeah. Then what that means is if we are here as the result of a deity, then you are going to have to go into detail about the mechanisms by which this deity created life. You simply cannot say, well, then this must lead to a deity. No. You have to you have to be ready and prepared to explain the process.
Yeah, you're trying to go from a purported effect to its cause by way of nonsense.
And this is going to require you not merely to propose a God as the answer, but you now have to explain this God. You have to explain, if this God is alive, because life can only come from life, then how is this God alive? And what sort of being is this? Is he bigger than a bread box? Is he alive in the way we understand life? Does he have metabolic processes? Does he take dumps? Does he eat? Does he fart? Does he sleep? Does he have to clean out his earwax? What sort of being is this?
Well, no, we don't necessarily. Right? You don't necessarily have to know all that.
I'm exaggerating to make the point. But the thing is, at a basic level, you have to explain in what way this being is alive. See, so you're really opening yourself up for a lot more than you think you are. I think that you're just being able to say, well, because science hasn't proven life from non-life, therefore God. As the default. And you seem to think that that's really kind of all you have to do. And no, I think that there's a lot more detail to what you're going to have to...
Yes, and it is, by the way, an argument from ignorance. Mm-hmm. As we mentioned earlier, where you say that because science has not proved that this is the case, therefore my assumption that it's not the case is valid. Mm-hmm. It's an argument from ignorance. Sorry.
And it also gets you to infinite regress, because if God's alive, then some living thing must have... so on, and so anyway. It's a big mess.
So many things wrong. We've got, is it Hani and Sydney?
Yeah, g'day guys, how you going?
Good, how are you?
Fine, sorry to keep you waiting for so long.
Oh, no, that's okay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very clearly.
Oh, great, okay. Just want to say I love the show, of course. You guys have a little, there's a lot of feedback coming through.
Yeah, try and make it quick. We're having mic problems.
Yeah. You sound good to us.
I'm in a bit of a slightly difficult situation. I attend a youth centre in Sydney. It's a Christian-based youth centre, and we deal with a lot of kids who are sort of being kicked out of home, who are having some problems in their life. But I've also been given the opportunity to give a couple of talks on critical thinking and things like that. And I'm a recent atheist myself, thanks to you guys. Something has come up though where the issue is if getting some of these kids to begin some sort of critical thought, and they find out that, or they bring up questions and they start to leave their so-called Christian indoctrination. There's a bit of a problem where some of these kids could become suicidal, and that's been addressed to me as an issue by one of the head people who run the centre.
Why would they?
Yeah. Did they explain why they thought that was a possibility?
Well, yeah, because a lot of the times with the indoctrination there is this hope that the children will become supermen, so to speak, after they die. And if this hope is taken away, then their only hope, that being God, would be taken away, and that could sort of threaten the life of the youth, so to speak.
Okay. I don't know that that's necessarily all that valid a threat to worry about, but probably the best thing that I could say to sort of put your mind at ease about some of this is that, the transition from believer to unbeliever is not really like a light switch. It's a process by which the individual begins to evaluate the ideas in his head, starts thinking about it, well, maybe, it's this process over time. Now, I can see, I can imagine a situation where if you had someone who is this devotee of something, and they had based their entire life and they'd invested their entire sense of self-worth and happiness in believing this thing, right? And then suddenly it was all at once shown to them to be false, and they were deluded, and so this would naturally throw imagine someone coming home from work one day and finds their loving spouse in bed with someone else, right? That's sudden. So oh Jesus, right? I mean, that's a massive, horrible.
Yeah.
That's a cataclysmic sudden event. But yeah, that would make you depressed, change your whole outlook on things, or probably make you suicidal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this. When we're talking about going from believer to unbeliever or what have you, it's not usually like that. It's a much more,
There are though people, and I talked to Marlene Winnell at the Texas Free Thought Convention, and there's a little bit of from her in the podcast, the special podcast I did from that. There are a lot of people who suffer serious depression and other issues. She's actually dubbed it religious trauma syndrome, where when they no longer, when they acknowledge their own disbelief, they've essentially are in a position where they've lost their family, their support group, their entire social network, and this is potentially traumatizing. And then there's also the issue of people who, in addition to rejecting the theistic claims and acknowledging their atheism, also buy into existential claims, about life is now meaningless and why not end it all type of thing. I think that the issue here is complicated. I agree with Martin. I don't think it's incredibly likely that this is going to be a big thing. But those people who do find that they're suffering like this, they need to be recognized and counseled and assisted by professionals in some cases. And in many cases, it's just a matter of giving them additional information, helping them recognize, for those people who bought into some other type of nonsense, that in fact, life is what it is, and the reward is the living, and living till tomorrow is preferable to dying today, even if 100 years from now, I won't exist and none of this will matter to me. It's like the example that I've used before of I have to eat. I could stop eating voluntarily, and some people would suggest that I should do that for at least a little while. But I could stop eating because I could say, if I eat this sandwich, my body's just going to use up the parts that it can use. It's just going to need more food in a handful of hours, and I'm going to have to get rid of the waste material that I'm not using. And ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, this was just all a big waste because I just got to keep doing it again. And someday I'm not going to eat anyway, so why don't I just stop eating? I think that kind of becomes obvious. The meaning of life, or the meaning of eating, is the benefit that you get while it's going on and for some time after, in the case of eating, while your body's processing your food. But I don't think, I'm with Martin, I don't think this is anything that we need to be terrified of, that there's going to be an epidemic of people committing suicide simply because, someone exposed a delusion to them.
Although if it did happen, it wouldn't be, as you said, from the loss of belief. It would be from the loss of friends, family members, the esteem of people who, equate, religious belief with goodness. It would be that loss of structure. But, you can be there. There are other folks around. There's a wonderful Sydney atheist group out there. Hi, gang. Who are very supportive. So
there's nothing about atheism that necessarily leads to suicide, and so therefore I don't think that you bear a great deal of responsibility for telling people what you honestly believe is the truth and convincing them of false things. If anything, if we're going to point blame at somewhere for people who end up killing themselves because they've lost this delusion, the blame needs to be pointed at the delusion that started this. It's like convincing somebody, you're a millionaire, you're a millionaire, you're a millionaire, you're a millionaire, and then they get all hyped up and excited, and they start spending, whatever money, and they go check their bank account, and you go, I was just kidding. I mean,
it's like a big, massive letdown.
Yeah, it's not the truth that caused this, it is the lie that caused this.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing how powerful the indoctrination can be. I mean, I know one of the guys, he said to me, he goes, if it wasn't for God in my life, I would have killed myself already.
Yeah. But they're
really
taught to think that way. Again, a perfect comparison would be to situations with kids coming out as gay, right? It's not the awakening to their sexuality that throws them into depression and suicidal thoughts. It's being bombarded with hate and anger and you're a horrible, evil, hellbound sinner that they get from other people as a result of that. So again, it's the truth will never, rarely. Well, I won't say never. The truth about yourself rarely hurts you. It's the lies that people tell to hurt you.
Agreed. Well, thanks for taking the call, guys.
Sure.
You've got a growing group of lovers here in Sydney.
All right.
And if you ever need a new home to come and visit, we've got our first female atheist prime minister, which we're pretty proud of. So,
That's
welcome here anytime, guys.
All right, thanks so much.
I do want to come someday. It's a long way to fly.
Unfortunately, there's like almost no time at all left. And so, Jordan, you there?
Yeah.
I can't even let you get to your question, but the question that as it's typed in about your mom addressing your arguments, saying that her beliefs comfort her.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The last response applies to that, but also I'd point out that it's somebody could say that a bottle of scotch or shooting up heroin comforts them.
Right.
If they care more about what's comforting than what's true, that's an issue they're actually going to have to sort out. I think the best thing is probably to point out the benefits of understanding the truth as best you can. And I apologize, but that's actually all we have time for.
And show how positive your life is, even as an unbeliever to her.
On the new
and that she
shorter
can have
show.
that too.
But there's a list of everybody else. As a reminder, we'll be at Threadgills here shortly, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Where Jen will be on? No.
Yes. Yeah.
Jen shook her head. All right. We'll see you all then. Thanks a lot.